Welcome to the GSTEAM Academy course for mentors and to this introductory lesson on intersectionality and inequalities in education. We'll try to go through initially some concepts and definitions and then some evidence and data. The concept of intersectionality was coined in 1989 by Kimberlé Crenshaw, a feminist civil rights advocate and legal scholar, um, uh, to explain the oppression and discrimination faced by African American women in different walks of life. Um, Kimberlé Crenshaw, a black scholar and legal specialist herself, was focusing on how the United States legal system was failing to address the specific discrimination faced by Black women, either placing them in the women box or category, and then in that case, relying on concepts in judicial cases mostly featuring white women, or in the black person category. In this case, applying to their realities generalized ideas and stereotypes based on cases and concepts featuring black men. Instead, Crenshaw suggested to use intersectionality as a lens, and she used an interesting metaphor to build and to illustrate her theory. The metaphor of the crossroads or a traffic intersection, and the image of a multi-car collision, whereas black women are hit by two cars, so that injury can result to them from sex discrimination or race discrimination or both. So the key idea of intersectionality is that looking at different inequalities is separately is not enough to grasp the complexities of societal and structural inequalities and bias. Um, Through intersectionality, we focus on how different forms of discrimination are co-constitutive, how they overlap, how they interact with each other and affect each other. When we understand gender, um, and we look at differences between men and women, for example, intersectionality helps us avoiding to conceive men and women as homogeneous groups or monolithic groups, and helps us to understand how they are subject to or enact power, privilege, or discrimination based on how each individual is positioned in different ways in society, depending on many factors such as class, migration status, race, and ethnicity, ability, gender identity, sexual orientation, age, etc. Um, we said race and gender historically were at the core of intersectionality theory, but other important differences and inequalities axes are to be taken into account. And we want to briefly focus on gender identity and sexual orientation, because when we teach or train on gender equality, we tend to stay binary, so to speak. We start by introducing the basic distinction between sex and gender. So differentiating between biological sex on one hand, based on hormones, reproductive organs, and bodily features, and the male-female biological sex attributed to newborns at birth, and gender on the other hand, distinguishing the different expectations and roles in society and culture that are foreseen for men and women. Uh, Typical examples being the caring mother on one hand, the breadwinning father on the other. But there again, we tend to perpetuate a binary um, categorization of men and women, where while we tend to forget other important dimensions, such as those that the genderbread person here is reminding us to take into account, and therefore gender identity. So how one think and perceives himself or herself, and gender expression, that is how gender is demonstrated through the different ways one person acts, dresses, behaves, and interacts, and sexual orientation, that is about physical, spiritual, emotional attraction towards other. So ultimately, it is this complicating sex and gender beyond binarism that is all about acknowledging and addressing the needs of LGBTQI plus communities and the discrimination they face. Um, as anticipated, it's important to have or to try and have an evidence-based approach to intersectionality in education. And we try to go through here some recent and updated data. Not always we have data that are specific for STEM, but it's important to try and see what is there, particularly in the recent education and training monitor from the European Commission, published in 2025. That, for example, focuses on migration status, showing how early school leaving rates exceed 20% for young people born abroad. And the chart here is showing the intersection between gender and migration. As we see, the highest bars are for young people born abroad, either in EU countries or outside the EU. And the highest rates are reached by young boys. Therefore, the intersection between gender and migration stages. So that's an interesting intersective inequality to look at. Here, to continue, the other inequality axis that is highlighted by the education and training monitor data is class or disadvantaged background. as several data streams are actually showing how socioeconomic status impact on school performance, but this chart here shows as one of several possible examples the gap between students with disadvantaged backgrounds, highlighted in red, and students from middle upper class, highlighted in green. And we see how the former ones, so students with disadvantaged backgrounds, tend to repeat grades 4 times more than their better off peers at the EU level. And we are aware that socioeconomic background is the largest determinant of educational disadvantage, and impedes the development of young talents, negatively impacts on intergenerational mobility. And so it's an issue to be addressed in educational policies and practices. To continue with the impact of disadvantaged background, we see here data on achievements in reading, math, or science. And we can see how at the EU level, less than 20% of the students, 16.3 to be precise, so less than 20% of the students with disadvantaged background achieve good levels in reading, maths, or science. Here, good achievement is defined as reaching at least level 4 on the OECD PISA scale. And this broad indicator of upward mobility is actually attempting a longitudinal snapshot as well. And you can see the measurement started in 2015, 2018, and 2022. And what it shows is a negative trend. So the percentage was down from 20.8 in 2018 and 21.1 in 2015. So it means that fewer disadvantaged students are reaching a good level of achievement. And this is particularly deteriorating in few countries such as Slovenia, Germany, and Finland. But in general, the trend is a negative one. Another useful source of evidence and data on intersected discrimination in education is the Inequalities report promoting diversity and inclusion in schools, published in 2023. The report is putting intersectional inclusiveness very explicitly at the center of data collection and policy recommendation. We want just to briefly mention two elements from the Inequalities, and namely in this slide, the number of education systems reporting the most common grounds for discrimination in schools, in particular the discrimination cases reported officially reported in schools in the years 2022-2023. First of all, we can note how over half of the European education systems reported that they do not access to comprehensive data. And this is considered to be due to underreporting of discrimination cases and to the fact that the reported cases are only the tip of the iceberg. And then continuing in the descending order from this chart, we see how most of the systems of the education systems stated they have official data on discrimination cases against students with educational needs or disabilities, special educational needs or disability, discrimination cases against students based on their ethnic background, gender, and therefore to continue. Finally, it's also interesting to look at how education system reported on the data they have available, the data that are accessible to them on individual students' characteristics. And this, what we understand from this figure is that there is still a long way to go to have data collection in education system that is performed in an intersectional way. In most of the education systems, disaggregated data are collected at national level for statistical purpose, and more than half of them report having access to data concerning the sex and gender of students, the presence of students with special education needs or disabilities, the nationality, but fewer than half of the education systems report to have access to data on refugees, asylum seeker, or migration backgrounds, and very few report having data on learners' ethnic background. And this is quite contentious because the collection of disaggregated personal data is often perceived as a sensitive matter. And for this reason, there are constitutional norms, applicable EU data protection laws that apply, the Charter of Fundamental Rights, so the risk is stressed that disaggregated data collection might lead to discrimination itself or have discriminatory effects itself. But it's important to recall that the European Commission high-level group on non-discrimination, equality, and diversity affirmed that if collected and processed in full respect of the legal frameworks that are there and the safeguards that are set out, such data are essential for member states to address discrimination, equality, inequalities, and exclusion. So this is to be considered. We wanted to showcase evidence and data on intersected inequalities in education. We conclude and wrap up by highlighting how intersectional data collection is still an unfinished work, and therefore not enough data are available. In general, for applying to education at large, but it's even more difficult to narrow down than to STEM education. Thank you for your attention, and to the next class.